Happy Saturday, everybody! Why do I look so dark? Why do I look so dark and tanned and handsome?
Super backlit? Is this real nice out?
It is pretty nice out, isn't it? Hey, Board. Hey, Howling God. Hey, Raven. Hey, Pookie. Hey, viewers. Lurkers. I love you, lurkers. Just so you know. I may not say your name because I don't know your names, but I love you anyway. Happy Saturday. How you doing, Rage? How you doing, Pseudo?
Sleepy.
Me too, actually.
That is the appropriate response. Response. So, is everybody excited to talk about Chaos on Deponia? Because this is Project Wingman. Oh, yes. Super hyped. Super hyped. Can't wait. So I've adjusted the window a little bit. I think because the name's on the top, I could probably even just do that and make it look like readable and accessible. And I might even chop this up a little bit more and do a special one for when we're doing these so that I can have one window just for the entrances and one window for all the text and space it out real nice. And that sounds like work, though. Who wants to do work on their hobby?
You. Literally you. You do it all the time.
That's true. That's true. It is true. I can't deny that. How's everyone doing? I was looping. I think Rage was looping too.
I'm literally still looping. It's just paused.
I got to the point where I was going through loops. I'm like, I'm not even gaining resources anymore.
Yeah, I just finished clearing Act 2 with the Necromancer because the Necromancer is crazy OP. And I'm just grinding out resources at this point.
I actually think the Rogue is the best for Act 2, but beyond that, Necromancer. And the only reason I think Rogue is best for Act 2 is because when you stack attack speed and all damage, it just destroys all the mirrors every swing. Because they only have 1 health. So it summons mirrors and you're like, whack, and all the mirrors are gone. You're like, okay, whack, 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 because you're at like 400% attack speed.
If I had River unlocked, then yeah, that would be the way to go. But I don't have River yet.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm actually, maybe I'll do a stream of it after, because I kind of want to take River and Thicket into Necromancer and see what it looks like when we have 7 skeletons and 500% summon speed.
It's hard to get max skellies though.
It's not.
I mean,
you're not gonna. You're only gonna get 4 or 5.
6.
You're only gonna have 4 or 5 for like a while. But once you beat the boss and start the farming loops and getting all the gear constantly, I was up to 7, no problem.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to the farming stage yet. Like I said, I literally just cleared Act 2.
Yeah. Once you start farming, you're getting so much gear on every loop that it builds up. You're like, 50 pieces of gear for that level, and continue on. Can you tell we're super excited to talk about Chaos on Deponia?
The most excited.
Pseudo is apparently the most excited for it because he's just like, I have nothing to say.
Sleepy. Let the coffee kick in first.
Let the coffee kick in first.
Drink out of my cute mug while we get there.
I think we need a shirt that says that. I'm sure you can find a shirt that says, let the coffee kick in first. I almost guarantee it. Yeah, me too. Me too. All right. Let's dig into it since Pseudo says it all. Yep, you're right. 100%. And when you're right, you're right. And you're always right. That was a Spaceballs reference. No one ever gets it when I do that one.
Oh, I get it. It's just, like, yep, that's Spaceballs, and then move on.
All right. World building in Deponia. Now, I'm open to input.
Not horrific. It was pretty solid.
Yeah. I mean, they do actually build it up. It a whole lot to like get super excited over or super pulled in, but they do, actually build their own world. It stands on itself, or it stands on its own.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's amazing, but the way that they've built the world is at least reasonably engaging. Like you get a sense for what's going on. It's not just standard, like, here's a story about a person who does a thing.
Yeah, the world is a place. It has settings. There are people in it. It is contiguous.
It's serviceable. It's totally fine.
There is a world. It is contiguous. It makes sense. It all looks to fit, and the people act and look like they belong. That's about the nicest thing I can say, I think.
I think that's a very wordy way of saying perfectly serviceable.
Yeah. It's fine. It's not the worst world building I've ever seen, at least. There's a world. There's places to explore. Actually, they did go into that map view and like actually let you like move around on the sub and explore the world a little bit, and it was fine.
Wasn't that only in the second part?
Second part of Chaos on Deponia.
I have them mixed up, don't I? What was the first game called?
Deponia.
Oh yeah, it's just called Deponia. Okay. Yeah, the addition of the sub was nice. A nice little way to get around. Like you had a couple of mini games associated with it.
Gave you a sense that there are places. They are in locations. You can go to them and visit them. Some of the cities, the two cities you went to were actually even different. There's like different biomes and stuff. It kind of felt like a world. It was fine. It was fine. The world itself was not the detractor.
No, it wasn't.
So I hated the characters.
I was going to say, so speaking of characters,
there was a couple of characters that were actually fine.
Yeah. I liked his girlfriend. Return.
Really?
Yep. She's the only one that calls him out on his shit. She's the only character that actually almost makes sense. Like, yeah. He's an asshole and she calls him on it. That's probably the closest to a real character I'm going to find.
I liked the boat captain as well.
Doc?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not Doc. The is it Doc that's the captain? I thought Doc was the repair/surgeon guy.
Oh, right. The captain's the different guy. Right. I like Doc. The boat captain's fine too. Yeah. I actually found his father a passable character.
Yeah, I would say passable.
Were there any characters that you liked, like that you really like? What would your favorite be, at least out of the cast?
The boatman.
Yeah, the boatman, because he has that little side arc with the girl in the weapon shop. And I thought it built a lot of personality for him.
The way that he interacts with the main character is kind of like, what a prick. Which is sort of how we felt about the main character.
Yep. I couldn't give the main character a good ever, but he's okay. I mean, I hate him, but I think the objective of the character was to hate him. I think. I have to believe that. Nobody makes that character like, people are going to love this character.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true. If it is true, then that's a terrible decision. You shouldn't make your player character an asshole. It's the same reason I just stopped playing Alan Wake after about half an hour, because Alan Wake is a fucking dick. He's an asshole. He is abusive to his partner.
Well, I mean, what's even the main character's name in Deponia?
Rufus?
Forgot it. Rufus, right. Rufus is an asshole to everybody.
I always thought, I was looking at this, I'm like, oh, maybe it was just like the time of the era of when this was written. But I think this game came out in like 2012. I'm like, okay, no, this is way past the
PC era.
Asshole. Yeah, like the lovable asshole main character kind of arcs of just like, we like it when people are assholes. It's like, no, this is not as people don't like this so much anymore. We don't like being mean to everybody. It is a very much an older and angstier time, but this is a lot newer than I thought, and it's always strange. It's not. It does feel like it's intentional, but it's also just a weird choice if it is, because you just make your main character so unrelatable that the experience overall, you can't really immerse yourself in it, but that also could be the point. You know, it's a point and click, and maybe you're not supposed to be immersing. Maybe you're not supposed to feel like you're the main character. Like it's more of like a stage show, and you're kind of watching things unfold. But it doesn't always seem like a pleasurable experience just to like have to, you know, put yourself in the shoes of an asshole and not really have too much redeeming qualities come out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And hey, thanks for that redemption, Raven. I will look forward to it.
I'm stoked for that. It's a fun game.
Yeah. I never played it.
I played that game when I feel like I was way too young. When this game came out originally?
Let's see if
2005. I would have been in grade 5.
I do have it.
Yeah, I played that game when I was way too young. It scared the shit out of me.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. Because
it's a fun game. I beat it, but I was playing it with like my friend and his younger brother, who would have been like, I mean, I was in elementary school, so I don't know how young his brother would have been, but it really freaked out his younger brother. I was in a house, and next thing you know, this guy with the chainsaw kicks in the front door, and you're like, ah, shit.
Yeah.
I was like 10. Love the GameCube.
Oh my. Hold on. I gotta. Hey, Mr. Rubidoux, how's your day going, buddy? Welcome. Hold on one sec. I gotta. Sorry. I gotta share the documents. I forgot to do that part. I'm off my game today. I blame Loop Hero. It's all Loop Hero's fault. Everything is Loop Hero's fault. Has absolutely nothing to do with all of the OBS ninja bugs that we were hitting. Hangover day, but all good. RPing on GTA 5. Excellent. Never played GTA 5. Not once.
It's pretty fun. It's a good time. The mods are really cool too. The RP mods seem like they're pretty fun if you can get into a good community.
Right on.
We have like Gary's mod, RP. Those servers are always interesting. There's always people that take it way too serious, and it's just fun to watch them interact with the people who just don't take it seriously at all because it's a game. And then we just have interesting interactions with people who are like getting way too involved. It's like, yo, it's still a game. Gotta chill a little bit. You're still supposed to have fun.
The backlog is almost 5 lines.
There's some good games in the backlog too.
There are.
A good time.
I like the new system. Okay, so we're at an okay then, kinda, I guess.
I want to give it a bad purely based on Rufus.
I mean, I'm okay with bad. I'll happily give it a bad.
I think okay is a more realistic rating and less emotional rating.
Yeah, as long as we outline that.
Emotionally, we want to give this a bad. Realistically, it is okay, but we really hate Rufus.
He's still like consistent, and he's like, it seems like he's put together with intention. It's just that
he is him. It's not accidental.
Yeah, and it's just overall I dislike it, but as like a character in a story, like okay, yeah, at least I'd usually get something bad if they're all over the place, they're not consistent. They're usually if you can find certain characters that are like 2 or 3 characters in one because the writer just starts going all over the place. In one arc they just change, and all of a sudden you're like, well, you can kind of get that feel, but at least he's consistently an asshole. I don't like it personally, but as an actual like character design and the actual artistic method, it's like, yeah, sure, they had a vision that they wanted to make, and it seems like they made it.
It seems like they just wanted to waste time in this game, honestly. I don't know, that's the only vision I can see for this game. Let's waste people's time. Because getting to storyline, this game has a 2-sentence storyline. The entire game can be summed up in like 2 or 3 sentences.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's 3, but it's not many.
Yeah, the storyline is not good. It's thin and non-existent and padded out excessively with moon logic and multi-stage puzzles. And some of the moon logic was bad.
Some of the moon logic was really bad, but some of the moon logic I actually found endearing. Like I really liked the shop puzzle, for instance. But the rest of it was
the turn off the game's audio puzzle was ass.
I understand and disagree. I love the ARG like break the fourth wall puzzles.
but there's nothing to back it up, and there's nothing to. No, it's.
Oh, I like the implementation was terrible.
Yes, that's what makes it ass.
The concept of like, you know, maybe introduce a little bit of like, maybe you need to go into the menus and change a setting to solve a thing. And like introduce that earlier on in the game and not have it be a one-off. I really love stuff like that.
I'm not against stuff like that either. Just for the record, like Psycho Mantis is the most memorable thing in the Metal Gear Solid series. Okay? Hands down.
Agree.
100%.
It's just you need to condition your players correctly, and they did not do any conditioning.
No, they didn't. The storyline is a super simple 2 to 3 sentence story, padded out by moon logic and
it's
puzzles with too many steps.
There's another one after this, so it's kind of like
there is.
On a story arc wise, you're kind of getting just like the middle.
But you don't even get that.
I know, but what I'm trying to say is like, most games and most story arcs, they start off strong and they end strong, and the middle is kind of like a bunch of stuff kind of going on, but not always the most, engaging, interactive part. And then
most story arcs start low and slow and slowly build, and that's why I knew Star Wars 1 was going to be not what people wanted when it was coming out, because it was the first book of 6 books, basically. It's like, no, this is not what you want. You saw the last 4 books. You saw the exciting part. This is the build-up and introduction to all that exciting stuff you saw. It's not going to be what you want. It was what I expected. It was not what people wanted. This is the middle, just like nosediving.
Yeah, well, at least when I see, like, usually beginnings will have a hook, like you said, like a good story will start with, and he was killed, and then you have all the questions and stuff like that. They usually, starting off, they're presenting you with questions that you're going to have, want to have them answered, and a lot of them aren't really answered until the end. It's usually like the middle of most, most, at least from like the stories, especially for games, the middle you're kind of just going through it. There's not always a lot going on. Even like the Yakuza games, the middle you're kind of like, yeah, the stuff's going on, but you're kind of waiting for that kind of climax. And then since this game was broken up into 3 separate games, with this one being the middle part, it's kind of strange because it's harder to have that, that hook beginning and have a proper climax at the end, because you are just getting like the middle of a story. So they kind of like shot themselves in the foot a bit right out of the start. And kind of like there's not, I guess, a whole lot that could have been done unless they, moved to a more traditional episodic format where, maybe they're 3 self-contained better stories with an overarching, story arc that kind of connects all 3 of them together, rather than just kind of splitting it up and hoping that you'll just play them back to back.
So yeah. I'm with you on the beginning should have a hook, right? That's how you start a story. That's how you start anything to get that attention and pull them in. But from there, it goes much slower after the hook. That's just right at the beginning to get them started, because from there, the reason you want that hook to pull them in is because you start with character development, and you start with arc development, and you start with scenery setup and world introduction, and a lot of these slow things that are needed for the rest of the story to function properly. All of that was already done in the first game and was done well, but it was slow, but I enjoyed it because it was all new. Now we're getting to the middle, and they're just like, yeah, there's no story in the middle. There's nothing really that new for you. You already know the world. It just kind of falls off. It just disappears. Yeah. It's like, hey, no, there's no story here. There's no nothing. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's kind of weird. It's like you get the middle, right? And it's just a weird thing.
But the middle should be increasing after it. Like here they could have introduced new characters, been getting ready for the climax in the third, building up the interest, building up the plot. It's the exact same plot from the first game. Nothing's changed.
Yeah. I mean, like, look at Lord of the Rings, right? 3-part.
Yeah.
The middle is still fantastic.
Yeah.
Still, everything's introduced in the front. In the middle, they can still do it. It's just this game, like the way they serve that middle, they didn't put a lot, like it doesn't have that proper kind of new beginning and mini climax of its own conflict. It seemed to kind of, you just got some of the middle of it. It was kind of just, like I said, it's only a couple sentences that could be that could really sum it up, and it just seemed, a decision.
The story is so thin in this one that the only way I can think about it is the third one is what they wanted to do, and it's their baby, but they needed more time and they needed more money and they needed to put something out in order to let them finish what they really cared about. So they threw this together in order to feed people and, you know, just like, hey, here, eat this, hold off for a little bit, and we'll finish the good part. Like the Avengers Age of Ultron in a way. It does very little to progress the main plot of the series. Yeah, I mean, absolutely nothing has happened by the end, basically.
It ended up being, rather than like, you know, you're the middle of your metaphorical meal, it ended up being just like, yeah, here's some cucumber water, cleanse your palate.
Like, come on, man, you could have at least given us some pickled ginger. I love pickled ginger.
Pickled ginger is bomb. That is a true statement.
So we can give it a good here. It ran well.
Did it have a 30 FPS lock?
No, I don't think so. Maybe? I hope not.
Because if it did, then that makes it bad.
Yep, it does if it did.
I mean, for a point and click, I think that'd be fine if it's a 30 FPS lock, if there's animations and stuff that are done that way. It's kind of harder to do that than doing
cutscenes are 24. Everything else is variable.
24 FPS is fine for the cutscenes.
It's movie frame rate.
And it's animation.
Yeah, I actually don't have a problem with it. I just get real angry when people lock their games to 30 FPS for no reason.
And the variable frames is, and you're going to get tons of frames. It'll run on a potato. So we got good or okay with the 24 FPS cutscene.
That's good. Most cutscenes will typically do that if they're animated.
It's
movie frame rates and stuff like that. Actually, I've been playing. I played the Outriders demo, and all their cutscenes, which are I think in-engine cutscenes, are locked to 30, and that is a pain in the ass. And I would give a bad, because it is very weird to go from like 160 frames playing the game to all of a sudden a 30 frame cutscene. It's like, why does everything feel so jittery? And I look at the top right, it's like 30, and I'm like, oh,
I understand.
Oh no.
Now 30 but 30 FPS is fine if the whole game is 30. I don't notice it so much.
Yeah.
Like Bloodborne, I can play fine.
Yeah, and like frame timing too is good, but this was like, it's weird because it's a cutscene, so you know you get used to that movie thing, and then now it's not at 24, so it's not really a movie, it's more of a game. But then you're going from for me like 140 plus to just 30 all of a sudden. You're like, the fuck happened? It's like, oh yeah, they just lock it to 30, I guess. Which I mean, it makes sense because you don't want your cutscenes to frame stutter and lag, I guess. But
100 frames to 30. What is this? Risk of Rain?
It's just like, oof.
All right. Nobody else is in the document yet, but somebody write animation for me. Somebody do animation. I'm taking my dab. It's 420. Happy 420, everyone.
Spam yet.
What? It should have been. God damn it.
Let's see, link. I will type on the screen, but I don't think it's going to work.
We can just type it in Twitch chat, and then then Dez can copy it in. But overall, I'd say the animation was all right. Oh, there's the spam. I'd say overall the animation was all right. It was a little bit more needed. Let me rephrase. It needed more keyframes. They could have been smoother.
That probably is also the 24 FPS thing.
I'm talking about the in-game animations, like when Rufus interacts with something.
Oh yeah, they're janky.
Like you would generally get like 2 to 3 frames of animation as opposed to 5 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was okay. It reminded me a lot of the old Sierra point and clicks.
I wonder how it was animated. If like they used like sprites with bones, or if they just went and kind of hand animated most of it, and then they just plays, stored animation files, or kind of how that was done. Because I could see if it was, like traditional cartoon animations, and it just plays those that the keying is predefined, and there's only so much they can do, and depending on variable frame rates as well, that can kind of get a bit jarring and a bit weird. But if they did bones, then you'd expect it to be a lot smoother and tween a lot better.
Don't worry, we'll get to the final ratings, Snow. We'll get to the final ratings.
Yeah, it's like Pseudo said, it is highly dependent on the technology that they actually used for doing the animations. But
is it though?
The end result that they achieved was not great.
So here's my view. If the end result is not good, but it's good for the technology that they chose to use, then that's bad. Already. Like you started out bad. You started from the wrong technology. You shouldn't have chosen that technology to make this game because it made it a worse game.
I agree. I'm not trying to say that it should be good. I'm saying that the end result that we got was passable. So it's an okay. They could have done a lot better with a different technology, or a different way of doing those animations in the first place.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Definitely lots of room for improvement, but at least it seemed consistent.
I have seen worse. Like it wasn't like a terrible 3D model that walks up and tries to put its arm forward and then warps backwards and warps through its body and shoves a sword through its own stomach to hand it to you. And I've seen stuff like that. That's bad. This was okay.
A lot of point and clicks, especially the ones you see in like the 90s. You always see the state machines that just kind of jump, and you'll be like crouching, and then all of a sudden you're just instantly standing because there's no tweening between the two states. It just is like you're standing now, so you get standing animation and stuff of like interacting and get like all that kind of stuff. At least transitioning wise, it seemed to flow. Thankfully, like for point and click, there's not really too much interacting with the main character outside of the player deciding what happens, so they don't have to worry about enemies hitting them and having to change and transition from one state to another interrupted or anything like that. But I've seen point and clicks that you'll click on things, and the way like your character turns around will just be like jarring and snapping, or how they pick things up, maybe it doesn't align properly, and there's a lot of kind of small nuances that can go into it. They seem to have kind of covered, but the overall there's still lots of room for improvement.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing that comes to mind whenever we mention old point and clicks is the standard pickup animation, which is one frame here, and then one frame here, and then one frame here, and then it's in your inventory.
Yep. That's the kneel down on one knee and put hand on ground frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get like two, 3 frames.
Yeah.
It took me way too long to figure out how to pick up the sword in Prince of Persia. In my defense, I was like 4, but like we knew to crouch on it because it made sense, but you had to like get it right, and the crouching was just kind of, I guess we weren't holding it long enough or something, but I just remember being like, what's happening? Why does this look kind of slightly jarring? But eventually we figured it out and then got to play. But I saw that everywhere after that. Crouch to pick up.
Yep. Yeah, that was the standard for a long time. Style. Okay. It's consistent.
It is consistent. The art is generally well done.
Yep, it was of high quality. It was good polish. There's no bad clipping. Areas were distinct and unique. There's a frozen north. There's the higher end city. There's the low end dock. The boat out on the sea.
Color palettes, made sense.
Yeah,
the color palettes were actually quite nice.
Yeah, it was actually fairly nice to look at. That's probably why I made it all the way through.
There were a lot of stylistic animations that I'm remembering. I think mostly from the first game, because apparently I've blocked out a lot of the second one. But the first game had a lot of nice sort of set piece animations where they would make good use of complementary colors in their palette in order to give a really nice effect.
The second game really just had less than the first game, didn't it?
It really did. As far as an overall style rating, like technically proficient is what I would call it, and I think that is an okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it didn't really change too much from the first one.
It didn't, but it is portraying the same world, the
Yeah.
same story, the same characters. So it's probably good to not change the style. So I think generally we really do like the style.
I like the set design. I really do.
Yeah, and we do like the set design, but it's just got less than the first. And that's why you want to give it an okay?
Yeah, I think it's depending on what we kind of gave the first, or what we thought of the first. You know, this one is on par, slightly subpar.
This one is on par, I'd say, to the first for style.
Yeah.
Quantity, it lacks, but the style is still there.
It's like one of those things too, where you've kind of taken one thing and broke them into three parts. Is you kind of hope that, you know, it's a separate standalone game, that you would have some ability to put another unique kind of taste on it, or unique style, so that when you're thinking of the three of them, you're like, you can look at a set and be like, yes, this is from the second game, kind of an idea.
That's fair. That's fair.
Like, well, which one is it kind of from, right? Because it's unfortunately kind of packaged together as one overall experience, and that's where I kind of come from, where it's the same one. You know, they kind of took from the first one and redid it, and it's like, yeah, it's passable, but you know, you still have the opportunity to introduce some, you know, flavorings or some points that, you know, well, maybe things are slightly different for this arc, so that, you know, maybe things are slightly darker, maybe things are slightly brighter, maybe, you know, something, you know, something that makes it, you know, a different experience.
There's a nice analogy for at least the music fans and people like that will be helped with this one. It's like Tool. Tool is a beautiful example if you know their music, because you listen to one of their songs, not only do you know that it's them, you know what album it's off of. Even if you don't know the name of it, just by the sound of it. Every album they did for the first 5 albums, had a unique sound, but still sounded like Tool.
So I'm looking back at our previous review for the first Deponia game, and boy, were we ever more generous on writing. But
no. The writing was much better in the first game.
This is also true. We did give a good for animation and for style. And it's basically the same as the first game in both of those regards. Well, no, there is less animation in this one.
I think it was less quality. The first one had more stuff happening in it. Like the bull ride where you're bouncing around, get thrown across the screen. Yeah, the mine carts.
I was thinking of the mine carts when you go back to your house in the first one, and like there's almost always something moving.
Yeah, the second one was just less. It was just less. The animation wasn't there, but I think the style is.
Yeah, I think style was very consistent with the first one.
It does maybe lack something to make it stand out, but does that bring it down from a good?
I don't think so.
The style is still there.
I think it's still the same sort of style that we saw in the first game, and it was good then. It didn't stop being good.
I'm with that. I think it does get a good in style.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
So Deponia and Chaos Deponia came out in the same year, which is a bit wild. Which also makes sense to why they're
Why there's nothing in it.
Yeah. Yep. That is why it is a worse game. What else can I say?
Like it really maybe should have taken the like episodic approach, similar to like how Telltale and Life is Strange do things. You know, you have the full story, and then you sell episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. Especially if you're like making it so off the first one that you can release it in the same year, because I'm assuming reusing assets and characters and acting and writing and stuff like that. Because it really did kind of feel like that.
Musical score?
Yeah. What?
There was one?
I don't know.
I think we have to give it the same rating as previously. Then we gave it an okay.
That's what I was thinking anyway.
And said that the music did not get annoying despite being very repetitive,
nor hampered the experience of the game,
which is actually surprisingly kind of hard to do. And like people will complain about certain games that will have repeating tracks, and like it's so annoying. Why is it repeat? And they're like, you'd be surprised how many games actually repeat the same track over and over again. Just that if it's done well and not in your face, like you don't notice. And it's one thing I appreciate about the Yakuza series, is that whenever you get into a fight, you'll notice that it's pretty much always the same kind of battle music, but you know, it's not very, you know, invasive or, you know, in your face too much, that it doesn't bother you. You don't have to really pay attention to it. It just kind of slightly complements the experience, because if it's just silent, it would feel weird, but it's not like you're getting enhanced by it because it's like, you know, presently aware of it. It's just kind of that subtle complement.
Super generic pace music.
Yeah, it's like elevator music, right? It's like, if done well, you shouldn't really notice it, and it should just, you know, your experience, you'll just be like, oh, that was okay. You know, I wasn't bored, but it's not like you're sitting there like, what is this repetitive mess? Or you're not sitting there being like, oh my God, what is this amazing sound? It's just, you don't always need to be aware of it, but overall, you'll notice if it's not there.
Yeah, for sure. Voice acting.
The voice acting, I think, is severely hampered by the writing, but the performance itself is actually fairly good.
Yeah, I'd say that.
So sorry, I was going to say the bad for the story goes under storyline. So you're voting a good on the voice acting?
Honestly, I think so.
Okay.
Like, the voice acting had a reasonable amount of emotion to it. The voices made sense for the characters. You really got a feel for how those characters were feeling about their interactions with other characters through the actual acting performance itself. Like the writing for the boat captain, for instance, easily could have been done in a sort of like spineless pushover, just do whatever Rufus says way. But what it came off as is, why are you such a dick? Like, just stop. Maybe if I do this, he'll go away.
Sorry, Tudo, go ahead.
I was just going to, Rage pretty much talk about what I want to bring up, but it like the performances, you know, actually, I would say added quite a bit to it. There wasn't a whole lot going with the writing, so if the voice acting, you know, wasn't up to par as well, I feel like this game might actually be almost unplayable. I think it's part of that. It kind of saves it because it is more of like that, bit more of a theatrical experience. It's a lot more a bit forgiving because you're not, every time they talk, it's not like you're just like or what's going on, or come on, just like skip, let's get through it. You're kind of like, okay, I'm still watching a performance. And I feel like if, you know, the voice acting was even just okay, it really would have stood out. Like it's one of those, what's the part of the game was like, it's pretty important. And I'd say even the characters that, you know, we didn't like, even like how Rufus is and his writing is awful, at least like the way he talks does actually make him sound like an asshole. Like he does talk like that, and it doesn't seem like they're reading the performance. You could kind of get the emotion behind it. It's like, yeah, the person who's saying this is, you know, giving that performance as someone who believes the words, and it kind of has that snarkiness to it and that bit of, you know, emotion is there. You can definitely, even if you weren't really understanding the words that were being said, just going after how they were, delivered, you can still get a bit of that character from them.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no arguments. I had set out to give it a good from the beginning too. I just wanted to hear what you guys had to think. Yeah. Took the words right out of my mouth.
Turns out the voice acting is pretty solid. It's been such an just like on an utter tangent, but it has been such an experience retraining myself to not use the words good, okay, and bad when discussing parts of a game.
Yeah, just saying it's like, oh yeah, it wasn't the best, but it was great, and it's like, oh, can't say great because that's a that's a category.
Yes. Yeah. Sound effects.
Sound effects.
I think they were okay. There was never anything where I was like, that doesn't sound like that. Like, there was no, like, wet meat slaps.
That game, man.
I wouldn't have never noticed it if my music just worked. The cherry on top is I had no music, so we're just running around and there was quite a bit of running, and then
Flip.
I'm like, why is it raining so hard? Like, what is this noise? And then it would stop when I stopped. I'm like, oh, it's
Why it's
me.
raining
Like,
so hard?
why is everything a puddle? it's and then like the group, when everyone's in the group, it was just like, I guess because the music wasn't there, the mix was just off, so it was just like unnecessarily loud. Because I guess like the music is supposed to drown out most of that, but without the music, and there was no combat or anything, right? So that was the only sound playing. It just felt so much louder than it needed to be. I'm just like way too aware of the footsteps.
Yeah.
The airborne assault tanks were pretty great though. So in the back on topic, in the previous Deponia game, we did give sound effects an okay, saying that the actual assets themselves weren't particularly standout, but they didn't really hurt the game all that much either. And it like they were fine.
The assets weren't amazing, but they sounded like they were supposed to.
Yeah, it's hard to describe what it sounds like when sound effects aren't consistent, but it's very noticeable when you can tell, like when a quality just jumps from a sound effect to a sound effect, or you can tell that like one was designed by one person and one was designed by like a completely different person without like a proper style guide. It's a very nuanced thing, but it does stand out.
And you see examples of this in a game that we have all loved and lauded from here to wherever you want to go, Doom 2016. The base shotgun is actually very nearly as good as the super shotgun. Like it's very nearly as good, and it's much more versatile. But the base shotgun immediately gets forgotten as soon as you get the super shotgun, purely based on the sound effect.
That game is just ear orgasm all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
I love that game.
So on to AI. I think we nailed it in the previous one. We gave it a good because there should not be AI in a point-and-click adventure.
Yeah, it's. I'm trying to think of some weird edge case to be contrarian, but no, it's
every time they've done it, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's like no, can't. It would require. It would have to be something like super crazy. You would need some sort of like. I don't even want to think about how nuts it would be to have like a mutating, like point and click game based off some sort of AI that is changing things up as you go. because that's the only way you can do it, right? You can't.
Horrific.
You would have to respond like that way, and I'm like, that just sounds scary. It's like the thing.
That's terrible until the AIs are good enough to be like a really good GM.
Yeah, it's like once we get to that point, I could just see it going wrong, and this is just how like the first super evil AI gets created. It was just for some game, some choose your own adventure game, and then it just becomes self-aware and breaks out of the game, and then just takes over the world.
Well, you see,
then the whole world is the choose your own adventure.
but through its knowledge of the choose your own adventure, it has perfected entertaining humans. It can keep us entertained as long as it needs to, which keeps us placated.
Maybe that's how the Matrix starts. It was.
It all started as a point and click.
You know what? That's still a better story than Matrix 2.
Matrix 2 had some great fights in it, though. Really good choreography. So accessibility. It had actually an abundance of volume sliders, which is great.
Yep.
And it had subtitles, but I don't think full closed captions. And it did have an open inventory with one click button, which is nice for people who have limited mobility as far as their hand dexterity goes. Because you could just rebind it to something else.
The best way for it, if I remember, was to scroll. That's how I did it. Just scroll down and it pops down. And then one mouse button. It was lovely. It was actually really nice control.
Other than that, that's like basically all the options in the game.
That is all.
What do we call that?
Can you change the size of subtitles?
No.
Because for a game like this, that's pretty important.
That's also been a more modern trend. UI scaling, as far as I know, was fairly good.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem. I thought they were pretty sure I had subtitles on.
I guess we'd have to see how it is on like a 4K 55-inch TV. Because it wasn't until that started becoming more mainstream that people kind of realized, like, oh shit, subtitles are tiny. I remember Gears of War had that problem. Gears of War 4 launched, like, not only were the subtitles tiny, but you also just couldn't read any text anywhere. Open up the inventory or open up the pause menu. You're like, all right, time to break up the magnifying glass.
A lot of mid to late 2010s games had that problem.
I do remember that. That was unfortunate oversight of what were the testers were sitting too close to the TVs or what?
There was an audio puzzle, wasn't there? That didn't have a subtitle cue.
Ooh, yeah.
So that's kind of bad.
That's kind of really bad.
Yep, that's true.
That would be frustrating as hell. It was frustrating as hell without that, without an impairment. Like, honestly, I think that we'll talk about it more in mechanics, but I think that should have been like an Easter egg or something. I don't think that should have been a main puzzle.
I 100% agree with you.
That's something that, like, yeah.
Game Genie no needed for this game then, huh? Nope, but you do need to be able to hear. There's just no way around that, yeah.
Mechanics in this game, I think, were honestly worse than the previous game.
I'm done. We'll hear nothing else on the subject. Heard the series is a good gateway into point-and-click adventure.
Strong disagree.
The first game's pretty good.
No, go play old Sierra games.
Yeah, there's a bunch of old
games are way better.
Yeah, there's a lot more classics I can get. Even like Myst, even though it doesn't age the best, Myst is still pretty good. I liked
Mystery of
the Neverhood,
Druids,
which is a 3D claymation one, which was pretty decent.
I remember you bringing that up last time we talked about a Deponia game. Yeah, that game looks sick.
The first game I ever played was that, and it was a point and click. And it's not like the best game ever. I just have bias because it was my first PC game.
Pookie loved Machinarium. Play that one.
Yeah,
that's a real good one,
Machinarium is
too.
great. It does have problems for colorblind and color deficient people, though. It is highly dependent on color for some of the puzzles.
I have a friend who actually plays a whole lot of point and click games. I can ask them for what their favorite is. I know they keep a list. I don't know if they've published anywhere, but there's a bunch of the CR ones are really good. And there's like the 90s was like a really good like a kind of a golden age for point and clicks.
Yeah,
what computers could run.
And also Myst came out and sort of set that tone and standard, and everyone was like, oh, everybody's playing these type of games right now. Make them.
What was that game that Sierra did that was like dinosaurs and aliens?
I don't know, but I want this.
Dinosaur alien.
Oh, Dropsy.
Point
Oh god,
click.
Dropsy. I forgot about Dropsy.
The Dig. That's what it was. I love the Dig. Franbo was not great. Grim Fandango is amazing. Full Throttle is amazing. Sam and Max is amazing.
Have you guys seen Dropsy?
No,
I have not seen.
I don't follow point and clicks at all. It's the one category in my Steam queue that I have just off. Like, don't show me this ever.
Oh no, it's yeah. I'll send you a link after. You can watch it off stream. But Dropsy's
This is terrifying.
it's about a misunderstood but cheerful clown, and it gets
my.
wild. It gets weird. I think it's fairly recent.
Terrifying.
I love the pixel art.
Oh, it's so good, but
It is beautiful.
it gets real. I'll show you just watch the trailer after it. It's
But it does look disturbing.
Oh yeah, it gets creepy.
Interesting. Thank you. I may have never seen this if not for that. I don't look at point and clicks. This is interesting. You don't play much of that, John. Yeah, you've probably played more than me. Were there issues that I hit? Yes. Yes, there was. There was a terrible bug that I hit. And I had to go in and out of an area over and over and over again to try to make it trigger. I think it was like 3 or 4 times. I had to go in and out trying to make this event trigger. And the only reason I knew to keep doing that is because I had already given up on the game's silly logic and said screw it and used a guide. And I remember this because when it happened, I thought to myself, damn, it's a good thing I was using a guide or I never would have known to do this.
There's also a bug where the Steam achievements just don't work. And there's a black screen during cutscenes.
That's kind of important.
Yeah. Potential black screen during cutscenes. Some critical story events fail to trigger at times. That's pretty bad. That's all that's enough. That's definitely bad. RNG is good though. Isn't any?
Well, unless you want to count story events failing to trigger.
I don't think that's RNG. I think that's just a bug. You know?
I think that's just real life RNG.
Yeah. This is intentional RNG.
And I don't think there was any.
I don't remember there being any.
I remember there being some really stupid shit where you had to do it like 3 or 4 times to get the desired outcome. But that's not RNG. That's just stupid design. I guess it's good because there isn't any.
There is no RNG in the game. That's good.
I don't think it would have added to the experience.
Yeah, no, it definitely would have detracted instantly. You want a point and click that when you click on something, it does what you expect it to do every time you click on it.
that's not true for most point and clicks.
I'm gonna go over here. No, don't do that. Uh-oh. It fell in the hole.
And the control was okay. It mostly did what it was supposed to do.
Mostly did what it was supposed to do. We called out keyboard control for conversation selection would be really nice. Or if you're using a controller, like being able to use face buttons and modifier keys.
It was a little sluggish, like clicking on things, and having to move around, and double clicking on things to have the instant move. It was fine. So bad. Okay. Good. Okay.
I'm legitimately surprised that writing did not end up as a bad, but they technically did their jobs. We just hated their decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really more what it is. It's not that the game is bad, we just didn't like it. Though the gameplay can go right to hell. Went as well as you expected. It actually went better than I expected.
I think you were ready just to give it bad across the board.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even want to review it. I was just like, call it bad and be done with it.
But this is why we actually do the reviews, because sometimes we surprise ourselves.
Yep. We try to be as subjective as possible, and as much as I loathe this game, it's fine.
There's definitely still a market for it.
Yep.
It's just not a particularly good example of the games in that market.
Okay, can we talk about a game I liked now, please? Please.
Sure. I guess.
I really liked this game.
I'll be right back just a minute. You can start without me.
Okay. I suit.
Well, there's not much in the PC Gaming Wiki entry for Project Wingman. Don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign.
Probably a good sign. Since it was a fairly well-received game. You're going to find a way to get me to play Goodbye Deponia. Fine.
It's going to be expensive.
I'll make a million channel point redemption called No Deus, don't play that.
It's a donation reward. You can only request Deponia games
money.
if you have donated enough bits in order to unlock the high tier emote. And that tier is going to be high.
As high as me. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I'm not really here for the money, but to play something like that, you gotta pay me. My time is money. I'm not going to be enjoying my time for that one. 150K so far to do so. Yep. Yes, good games. I need some world building. Real quick.
The world building in Project Wingman, I actually found very endearing. It was much in the same vein as the Ace Combat games, but I found done in a way that sort of made it its own without straying too far from what you would expect for a game that is like trying to be sort of a spiritual successor to the older Ace Combat games. And I think it did it quite well. I did enjoy the world building in Project Wingman.
Okay. I missed most of that, so I hope you're typing it, but I'm good with a good in the world building.
Good with a good, you say?
No.
Alternate Earth. How do you think it stands up against the Ace Combat series?
I literally just covered that. I think overall, it was was a case of like doing fairly well at sort of doing their own spin on the way Ace Combat handles it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful homage. It's got its own mechanics, but it definitely borrows the gameplay. That's my comparison. But world building wise, I think I preferred its approach on world building.
Elaborate?
It might be because I've jumped into the middle of Ace Combat. Right? I've played 0, gotten a bit of a feel for it, and then played 7 and jumped like way way forward in game timeline. But just because it was based on like geography that I recognize,
That was
it was
one of the things I
easier.
really enjoyed.
It was easier for me to relate and understand and get a feel for everything going on. But because of the altered timeline and the so, creatively altered timeline, it's not the same world, I know. But it gave me a reference point. And that allowed me to work from there. And that they grew the story that way. Now, like I said, this is the first one in its series ever made. So it is starting from a fresh ground template. The other games maybe expected me to know more of the Ace Combat history. You could look at it and argue this, but you don't want your future on games in a series to prevent a new person from getting into it. You want it to be understandable still as its story and everything, and not rely too much on previous knowledge. Otherwise, it just creates barriers to new fans, and that's counter to good design.
Yeah, big agree. And I think Project Wingman handled the world building quite well. It went in directions that I could see being realistic based on the history of North America, where most of the game took place. They did really, really well.
Characters.
Yeah, I think it's smart for them to use affordances of Earth, but still be able to give it enough of a fresh take that it's not just relying on it more than just drawing from it.
Yep. Yeah, I like that line. That's a good example. Or not example. Good way to put it. Characters. I don't remember them.
I was gonna say, honestly, the characters from Project Wingman and Ace Combat 7 blur together for me, and I have a very hard time deciding which game is which. But I think they did a good job with the in-combat writing, and the character barks are quite good as well.
Yep. I'm good with giving it an okay, because they're kind of great one-liner characters. They've got personality. But that's all they are.
I'd say that Ace Combat does do characters a lot better, especially like the overall design of them, their personalities, and they're a bit more memorable, especially like the bads, people you're fighting. But as a first installment, I think Project Wingman. I think I should look into this before this thing, but I'm assuming it's a smaller team, and it had a smaller price tag along with it.
It's a tiny team, tiny team.
Yeah, there's only so many hats that you can wear with that, and I think it's really impressive what they've managed to do, and I think it's also really impressive that they didn't try to be Ace Combat. They don't try to match them. They still want to have their own distinct, I think they had a vision, and I don't think having super robust characters with arc and design was a full focus of it. I think they knew what needed to be there, and maybe they're hoping to expand it later on, depending on how well the first game does. If it sells well, then you'll have a bit more of a budget going forward. Because if you want robust characters, it's not just excellent writing you need. You're also going to need excellent vocal performances, and those all come with a lot of costs. For sure.
Yeah. I think the writing on the characters is also a little lacking, but I think a lot of it is presentation. You're right. Though, I don't remember 7's characters either. I think it's just 0's characters stood out to us. Mainly Pixie. Probably because I had to fight him so many times.
I was gonna say I do remember not the name, but the recurring villain, if you will, in Project Wingman quite well, and I thought that he was well written.
Crimson Squadron.
Yeah, their lead guy.
I don't remember his name. I just remember Crimson Squadron. I remember the look of their planes.
Vividly, I'm sure.
Yep, I liked those planes. It was a good fight. It was a good fight. So we're at an okay. And it sounds like we're at an okay across the board.
Yeah, okay, with a call out to say that the big bad was good.
They were good one-liner. They were good one-liner characters, but they were still just one-liner characters. Definitely did help combat, though.
Oh, for sure. It made the combat feel much more alive.
Storyline?
I have no idea what happened in that game.
Yeah.
There was a war, you're a mercenary, you're hired by a side, that side wins.
I think they needed a story, and I think it was there. But I don't think it was anything like Shakespeare in the air.
There's a story to deliver you from mission to mission, and it accomplishes its goal. It does its job. It's there. Mission accomplished story. Performance was good though.
Yeah. I think you started playing this game on your old rig, didn't you?
I don't think I did, but I've looked into a bit of it, and it's very well received. Good engine.
This one was also Unreal, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, this was one of the first UE5 games.
UE5 is, huh? I did not know there was games being published in UE5 yet.
Oh no, I'm full of shit. It was UE4. Totally wrong.
It happens. We didn't call you on it and just went with it, so it's we're just as wrong as you are. Happens. See, we're wrong all the time. You need to call us on it.
Now I'm curious to when these games are coming out, because they always talked about it was going to be next gen consoles, and then next gen consoles are here, but I don't think we've really got any next gen games.
Not yet.
No. Yet. I mean, like arguably Demon's Souls remake.
Demon's Souls is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I feel.
Yeah.
I think when Ratchet and Clank, I think it's going to be. I can't remember when that game's coming, but I'm really looking forward to the the rifts, traveling through rifts like that. I think that's going to be kind of mind blowing a bit.
I'm not much for 3D platformers, but I might play that. That does look pretty cool. That might be one of those ones that's like, you should probably play it even if you don't like them.
They're pretty fun. They're not like offensive usually anyway. They're not most. Like I understand why people don't seek them out to play them, but at least when you do play them, it's not like a frustrating experience.
Yeah,
it's not. It's nothing. It's just not the most exciting thing for most people, which is understandable. But those games, they're fun. You gotta just go through them and enjoy them.
Animation. So I think we're probably. Sorry, I think we're probably going to be at the same place we are in every other plane game we've played, in that it's solid objects flying through the air at high speeds. There's not ton of animation. Like, they still have the, you know, air brakes popping up to slow you down when you hit brake, and the wing flaps moving and stuff, but it's not... That's pretty minimal. That's pretty easy to do.
It would be nice to have like animations of things going on the ground, like you know, tanks rolling around or whatever, buildings getting destroyed, that sort of stuff. But there kind of isn't any, and I think a lot of that is to do with technical limitations more than anything else.
There is a little bit of tanks rolling around on the ground, but they're always targetable tanks, so they're not rolling around for long.
Yeah, it might be nice even just like the cockpit views, or even some of the UI stuff. And there's some stuff they could add. Not a whole lot as well. To you don't want to keep things too cluttered and too busy. But
yeah, you want to really focus on what you're doing in that game. I don't think that, like, honestly, I don't think a whole lot of extra animation would add much to the game. But there's really not a lot there. I think it's okay. What they have is fine.
Yeah, that's where we landed on the other flight games, and I think it's an accurate representation of Project Wingman as well. What's there is good, there just isn't much.
I like the style though.
Oh yeah, style was great.
I love the settings.
Really orange game though.
I love the very orange settings. Scenery, planes looked good too.
You know what it looked like? It looked like they were trying to ape the style of the Frostbite engine in Unreal. That's what it looked like.
I could see that.
I'm just happy there wasn't just like a million lens flare settings, or just like lens flare everywhere and just sun.
And I'm happy that the hit detection on the missiles worked. Oh, Frostbite.
So,
Frostbite.
Musical score then?
Yeah.
I missed the flamenco again. I didn't think I would miss the flamenco so much, but I really missed the flamenco.
Yeah, that's pretty much where my mind goes to when I go to think of it. Like, what was the music? It wasn't flamenco.
I'm so surprised how well that fits.
Maybe it's just that flamenco is awesome.
It is entirely possible.
We should throw it in a bunch of other games and see how it fits.
It would work in like most like medieval themed platformers, I think.
Are you Googling games with flamenco music?
No, but I should. Let's think if my audio is any better. I'm still crackly.
A little better.
It seems to be crackling less often.
Yeah. I mute and unmute myself because I didn't change anything when I left and came back, and it seemed to be when I muted myself but then unmuted it broke. So it might just be OBS, which would make sense to why the monitoring sounds fine. So I'm wondering what's going on there.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe
cool.
Your audio output.
So I think musical score is okay then. We can't remember anything about the music, meaning
so
it was
obviously
neither offensive or great.
I mean, if it was Space Country, we would remember that.
Yeah, or like we joke about it a lot too, but it's also just the whole fact of like inappropriate theming of music for certain contexts, right? It's not like you're in a battle scene and all of a sudden it's just playing like happy music and like calm music. Like it needs to accent that, or vice versa, where you're in like, you know, a calm scene or in between things where we're just casually flying and all of a sudden it's just playing something super epic, and you know, it's like you have like Doom Eternal music blast in the background while you're just casually going for a spin.
Yeah, no heavy metal during the love scene, please. Depending on the love scene.
To be pretty metal.
Please no Doom love scene.
Just gently caressing the super shotgun.
Oh no.
Okay, we're gonna stop there. Hey, Art of Fighting. It's going well now that I'm talking about a game I like. I like this game. Have you ever played Project Wingman? Have you ever played any of the flying games? Ace Combat, Project Wingman, anything like that?
If you like Ace Combat, you will like Project Wingman.
Yes.
Project Wingman is quite good.
Yes, that's basically where it is. If you've ever played Ace Combat and thought it was okay, you'll probably like Project Wingman. It was very good. It's not quite as insane in the control of the ships until you find the AOA. No, I never have. Only flying game I played was Tomcat Alley on Sega.
That's a game.
The last flying game I had played before these heathens got me to play some Ace Combat was Falcon for the TurboGrafx 16. Yes.
I used to play an Apache game on PC in like the late 90s. I can't remember anything about it other than the Hellfires were really good. That's all I remember.
There was some arcade game that I used to play all the time. It was some Apache one that it was real fun, and it started my love of like joystick, like arcade sims, and since then I've still played quite a few of them. Even like Arma 2 and Arma 3 planes, which are kind of jank, are still kind of fun to play with a joystick.
That's Falcon.
That is a UI right there.
What about Top Gun for the NES? Or is it Super NES?
That was probably SNES. Might it be NES? Oh yeah, NES. It actually looked about as good. Maybe even a little bit better.
Oh, what was that joystick for the NES? That was really weird.
I don't know. Anyway, yeah, voice acting.
Voice acting.
So the voice acting was good, as we pointed out. The characters were okay, but the voice acting is what made them okay, because the one-liners were so well delivered in combat.
Yeah, there was a lot of emotion in the delivery. There was a lot of flavor to the characters that was lent by the voice actors.
Personality. Didn't sound like they were reading the thing. It sounded like they were in combat with some adrenaline pumping. I mean, the giant controller that was like an arcade pad with a joystick for the NES? Is that the one?
It was it's the IR sensor one that came with a piece of, like a Y-shaped piece of plastic that you put in into a little center part that had buttons on it, and somehow the buttons work even though the piece of plastic doesn't actually physically connect to anything through it. AVGN did an episode on it, and it was just weird. Very weird. I'll see if I can find an image of it.
Yeah.
I love that Nintendo is just willing to take those risks. Also, hey Punk.
They used to be. Hey Sergeant Pook, how you doing? Arcade stick was the advantage. Ah. Excellent. Let me just take a quick look. I gotta see this. NES Advantage. Oh, that was the arcade stick. Okay. Not what Pseudo's talking about.
See if I can track it down.
Man, we are having an off-topic week.
It happens.
As always.
That's half the fun, Chat pipes up and wants to talk about something. Then chat gets to talk about something. That's why we're here. You don't have to twist my arm too hard to get me to talk about video games. Let's put it that way.
It's a weird IR thing that looked like a cheap version of Battleship.
The U-Force, I think. I think it's the U-Force. Yeah, it's the U-Force. And it was like an IR thing, and then it just also came with a stick you put in the middle for like a joystick.
Oh, I see. That is definitely a thing, isn't it? Hello, thing.
Oh, apparently somebody got it working on the Switch.
Oh,
yeah, apparently. This is
It doesn't like
kind of small. I can blow it up, but it gets blurry real quick. It's a pretty small image.
So that the actual joystick part doesn't actually like click in or connect anything electronic. It's just like it just sits in there, a little plastic kind of like half circle. But somehow the buttons on the left and right still work, which is kind of like a,
Well, it's probably using IR blasters in the handles itself to register on the little platformy thing.
That would make sense, but I'm wondering if it's like powered, or maybe it's just like some battery that would just last a while.
It's probably just a relay. Like you click the thing, and that force generates enough electricity to activate the relay, and then you get the IR blast.
That'd be nuts for an NES peripheral back.
Well, you know what we have to do now?
Wouldn't be surprised.
We have to get our hands on one and crack it open. Inquiring minds need to know.
And then play the next Ace Combat with it.
Yes.
Apparently, you can have one for like $30.
Oh, that's not too bad.
And then there's other like new in-box ones for $300.
Why are you so mad? What's up? That's not good.
Oh no.
It's okay. As you get older, you'll find out that most of the things you had are now worth a lot because most people threw stuff out.
I just found out that copy of Dragon Force I have is a couple $100, apparently. Right on. I love that game. Were we at a good pseudo?
Yeah, I think it for what they had and the team that they had. I think they did a really good job. I don't think it detracted in any way. I think it actually, enhanced the experience. It's one of those things where it'd be super noticeable, and it's kind of hard to do some of those line deliveries right for interjet communication, and it can come off super cheesy if they're not actually giving a great performance or putting that emotion behind it.
For sure. I gave it a good. Sound effects. Mr. Audiophile.
Pew pew.
I would say it's definitely on par with the Ace Combat games as far as audio goes. The audio is quite well done. The special weapons, like the unrealistic weapons, the lasers and whatnot, were really neat. They had cool explosion-y, zappy sounds.
Oh, the railguns.
Oh yeah, the railguns sounded fantastic. I'm not an audiophile. I just have standards.
That's how
you're talking to me, though.
That's how I am too, Sergeant Pook. I'm not fully an audiophile. Like I don't know the name of every headphone and have fleets of headphones, but I do like good stuff. So I do have a good mic still, and I do have a nice headphone still.
You have arguably one of the best mics on the market.
I wanted a good mic. I like this mic. I do. My ears each hear different, so I just have to hope I balance stuff correctly.
Can be tough.
You're an audiophile, sir. I totally forgot about the railguns, but that was great. I loved the railguns, and yeah, they sounded awesome flying by. I remember planes flying by sounding great. Everything sounded on point. I remember the sound of the wind, the sound of missiles taking off. I liked the sound of the gun. Gun go burr.
Gun went very burr.
It tore things up in that game. That was a damn effective machine gun. I liked it. I used it a lot.
There's a reason I waited until I was making good money to get mine, Punk.
Pseudos was a gift.
It was. I got really lucky.
So I'm guessing you noticed that there's 2 SM7Bs in the show right away.
I think my name text hides mine a bit, but that's okay.
Sugar mama.
of sorts. Of
Not
sorts.
quite.
No, just a really good friend who's audio engineer, and was hearing that I was having mic issues, and then it's like, oh look, now you won't have mic issues. I'm like, well, I don't know how to use it properly, so I'll still have some, but overall the quality is amazing.
Absolutely.
I'm learning.
Has the audio engineer vetted your interface purchase yet? I'm curious because I really like the Moto M2.
No, I should message them and see what they think. I'm hoping that when restrictions are down, I'll be able to have them over and be like, help me with my audio and see the setup. Also just miss hanging out with them.
Sounded great. Any arguments? Anybody want to call anything out that they didn't like?
I think the audio was just genuinely good. I can't remember anything that I didn't like.
Yeah, me either. So like the worst thing we can say is the music is kind of unmemorable, but that just means it never got in your way. Your focus is entirely on the planes that you're chasing.
Yeah, it'd be noticeable, if they were either subpar or bad, because like they would really stand out. I think especially for these games, consistency is really important, and mixing. If some sound effects are just for whatever reason ungodly louder than others, you shoot a certain gun and all of a sudden it's just like drowns everything out, or sounds out of place or anything like that. But it was consistent. Everything added to the experience.
Moving on to AI. We usually have an argument on this one, especially in playing games.
This is one of the ones where I really started picking out like, oh, they're doing this maneuver. I know how Deus is going to respond to this, and it worked every time.
But those are also your bulk jank pilots that are just group trained, and probably would a lot of people respond the same way. And they're not the high tier.
It's not
trained people.
Top Gun at that level. It's all just kind of comes down the same. These are procedures. This is how you react for certain scenarios. They usually don't allow for a lot of creativity because they try to find what works best and then drill it into them. That everything then becomes instinct, and you just do things for these scenarios out of instinct.
And even on a standard difficulty, the decisions that the other planes were making in the positions that I was in while trying to deal with them genuinely tested my skill over and over and over every time.
I think an important part for the AI in these kind of games is just the cheese factor of how easy you can cheese them. Because that's something that I always find, especially in games, is like when you kind of have that dueling kind of sense. I'm really bad for just finding out the best way just to break the AI in a way that I can cheese it. Like, if I turn a certain way, or if I, do a certain pattern, they react in a certain way that I can exploit them. And, if that happens consistency, then it's kind of like, I understand why, but, all of a sudden it breaks that immersion barrier of, these are supposed to be, intelligent enemies I'm fighting, not just the computer simulating for my experience. Kind of stuff like that. And I think like AI for flying games is usually okay, because they usually do kind of find the predefined paths, and there's usually so much going on that you can't always notice too many of the patterns. I was playing Star Wars Squadron not too long ago, and that one doesn't have the best AI. They will crash into each other. They'll just kind of stop and then turn and then start a new pattern, and it's like right there it just breaks. They're just like, oh yeah, they're doing this predefined stuff, and they'll keep doing the same thing where they just fly straight at you, so you can just kind of shoot them, or they'll do the same kind of loop. So I think on that front, Project Wingman, as long as the Ace Combat series does a good job of kind of keeping it a high rush kind of dynamic feel of you looking around where the next one is, and they're not just kind of waiting for you to kill them.
Yeah. There was definitely no breaks, but I'd say those types of things would take it from okay to bad.
Yeah,
not push other games up to good.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go and say it's like the most amazing, plain AI. It's not like it's juking you out, or there's like
they do juke you out at times.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's not like something where it's completely dynamic, and each time they're juking you out, it's like a completely different pattern they're doing, rather than just doing a quick turn on you and you just need to react to it. It's not like there's some crazy maneuvers going on, keeping it like that. But at least they're not crashing into the ground or crashing into each other, or just flying in weird patterns that are obviously recognizable, or just flying straight and just allowing you just to pick them off without any sort of challenge.
I quite enjoyed it, and I also remember I'm playing not on the highest difficulty, so
yeah, I'm
not good enough to fully do this game justice, because honestly, standard kicked my ass, like thoroughly kicked my ass. I died more in that one fight against the first one against Rogue Squadron than I died against all of the bosses in Demon Souls combined on my first playthrough. That fight kicked my ass.
I mean, it's also not surprising that you breezed through Demon Souls, though.
Yeah, I have a little more experience in that genre. But that's still a number. That's one fight in the game.
Trying to think of how the mechanic of pairing in a plane would be.
Yeah, I used a DS4 for it, and it was lovely. I loved it. It was wonderful. You'll hear me gush more because we're getting to the gameplay section, which is what this game is really about.
Really all about, yeah. I think the important thing here is to be consistent with our ratings in the Ace Combat series. And this game, I'm not sure if it's that I was noticing it more because I had seen more playing game, but I did feel like there was more like pattern reuse that you were able to at least subconsciously adapt to very quickly. But we gave them a good, so we should give this a good.
Yeah, so you're seeing pattern reuse, but what I'm doing is figuring out which way the plane is flying and flying in a certain offset of it, waiting for it to make a move. Any move, so that I can... I'm
was
pushing
often
it.
Doing the same move is what I'm saying.
Because of its angle and direction, it's doing the one to get the furthest away from me rather than turning into my missiles. So if it didn't make that move, it would have been making a worse move. Yeah, it was a lot of my positioning and pushing it too. And just using the plane's path, because I started picking up on these games after my second one.
And I'm not saying that it's not good. Like, I'm not arguing that we shouldn't give it a good. I'm just noting that this is when I really started seeing a lot of those patterns and would go, oh yeah, I know exactly how this is going to play out.
I think that's partly my skill building is my point. In part. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, also like difficulty settings too, right? But I think that's fine. I think that's probably, at least for where you're at, preferred than having every enemy just be like an ace and just completely going wild all the time. It might be kind of frustrating if every enemy took like a shit ton of effort to get down. So I think they did a good job of balancing it. I don't remember what game it was, but you're trying to shoot down helicopters and jets, and since it's AI, they would just perfectly time flares each time, and there's just nothing you could do about it unless you shot after someone else shot, so you can time it right after that. And sometimes they would still pop flares because for whatever reason they're just not on any cooldown. So there just seems to be an infinite amount of them. But it's so annoying. You just sit locked on, being like, "Come on, pop flares early," and it's like, nope.
That sounds
that's gonna happen.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. That completely counteracts the whole point of locking on. It's like, okay, the moment you shoot, they pop flares. Like, okay, how do they know? How do they know the moment it leaves?
Sounds like Descent free space. Nothing but countermeasures everywhere. Yay, that sounds like so much fun.
It's like playing against a blue deck.
Yeah, that's a very, very good example. You blue players, all of you out there, you're bad people. That's right, I said it. Nobody can have fun at this table but me. Who do you think you are? I had to get that.
There's lawyers. It's fine.
Well,
everybody needs one
that's
eventually.
magic, though. That is just magic, though, right? That's our name for it in our group when we used to play it a lot was Lawyer Ball, because it's just adding rules to the table. That's all you're doing. Take your instance and instantly fuck yourself. Yeah, well said. Though I played a lot of white green, so I do love me some instance.
White green can be pretty fun. Let's talk about accessibility, though, because I think this game actually did a pretty darn good job of accessibility.
I wasn't even thinking when I put good.
It had full audio sliders, including a master, which is a really nice thing to have. It did have subtitles, although not closed captions. Although closed captions would just be explosion sounds the whole time.
Yeah.
And it did have the ability to adjust the placement of your subtitles, which is really nice. It also
FOV, right?
I believe so. Yes. It had FOV for first and third person views, which is great. It had full controller rebinding. It also had the ability to rebind buttons to a joystick or a HOTAS if you wanted to use a setup like that.
VR support.
All sorts of adjustments for like the different camera sensitivities. You can adjust the sway, you can adjust the camera distance, you can change the HUD color, you can change the cockpit HUD color. It had the ability to toggle on the cockpit in the HUD mode. It does not seem to have colorblind modes, which would be a nice add, but it does try to address that using the ability to change the HUD color as opposed to the background that you're looking at. So yeah, it's good. They did a good job. You also have the ability to change the
minimal reliance. They still used color on color to prevent impact on color blind, and the ability to change the HUD colors helps that a lot too.
Yeah, for sure. Like that's a big thing, because if you're stuck with like a green HUD and then you go into one of the extremely orange levels, you just can't see your HUD anymore if you're red-green colorblind.
Yeah. We had to go down to 9 size text to get all that in. And that's all stuff they have. Not even listing anything they're missing. Okay?
That's good. That's what we should have to do.
That's awesome, guys. Awesome. And that's a tiny team. Tiny team. It was like five guy core team, if I remember right. Something like that. Thank you.
Good.
Good job. That's impressive. I mean, there's a lot of backing and support behind that eventually. So there's a lot more names than that, but the core of it was 5 guys to get it all started and going. The mechanics, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a good right now, and then we can go ahead and talk about all the reasons that the mechanics are wonderful.
Well, you played it. You
I did. Start. There is no time limit. Let's just start with that. It's Ace Combat without a time limit, and yet it's tuned and configured in a way that it's not easy. It's not like because you have no time limit that you breeze through it. You can just take your time and be careful. No. The enemy is actually pretty good. They're going to get their hits in. They're going to make their opportunities. But beyond that, what I started loving by the end of it was the railguns. The railguns were a beautiful addition to the gameplay. The reason the railgun is an amazing addition to the gameplay is because the railgun doesn't really work like a normal railgun. The first time it fired, I was like, that's not how a railgun works. But then after playing it for a while, I was like, this is awesome! Because what it does is it leaves this long trail of damage in the air. And the damage kind of lingers and sits there. So it forces you to fly around them. And it creates like pillars and obstacles in the sky for you to have to actually maneuver and fly through. There's lots of warning, there's lots of lead up, they're completely avoidable, but you need to pay attention. Absolutely need to pay attention. Oh, I love those. And they look cool, and they sound cool, and they will F you up very fast. Very, very fast.
And there was no weirdness with like plane systems or anything. Like everything made sense when you were using it.
Yeah. Yeah. All missiles and general plane movement felt great. Flares were a wonderful addition to the game with the increased difficulty. AOA is a nice way to handle extreme maneuvers while turning it into a risk reward for removing your flares. Until you get crazy later planes, I think I was told. But for the most part throughout the game, that's just a major choice you have to make every mission. AOA or flares? Do you want to be able to move like a ballerina in the sky, or do you want to be able to break locks? Some planes didn't have a choice. And then that was the choice you had to make. Which plane do I want to use for this? Oh! So I don't have a lot of room to put it in there, but I really liked the way they did the weapons as well, with the different hard points and then the loadouts for each hard point on each individual plane. It made choosing plane an interesting task every time I did it. It was simple, it was straightforward, and they were varied and dispersed enough that I was wanting a different plane for most missions that I did. Rarely did I use the same plane over and over again. Maybe 1 or 2 missions most. All good things.
I'm still just, it's
kind of, yeah. Okay, so there's like, ground targeted missiles, there's bombs, there's ship missiles, which are amazing. They take out the big airships as well as the big boats in one shot. Then you have your long range targeted missiles that you have to keep them in the focus of it. So the farther away they are, the easier it is to keep them in the middle of your screen, right? And this missile just tracks forever and won't leave them alone as long as you keep them locked on. It will hit. Then you have your multi-lock-on missiles that can lock on to multiple targets. And how it works is you'll have a choice, like depending on the ship, it'll have an option of 3 or 4 of these things on each of its 2 to 4 hard points. So at the beginning of the mission, you choose which weapons you put on each one, and then let's say you had the option to put multi-target on 3 of your hard points or all of your hard points. So normally maybe you can lock onto 3 targets, now you can lock onto 9, and you'll have triple the amount of them. So it'll just add to them, or you can go for versatility. Excellent. I recommend the game personally.
There's also a free demo available on itch.io if you want to just go check it out.
There you go. I recommend the free demo. Screw other people's gameplay. Just pick it up and play it for a little bit. Yeah.
It's also good to see how well it runs.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I hit no bugs at all in the game.
I'm looking through some bug threads, which is why I've been staring over here. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of like VR related bugginess because it's an old engine that has been retrofitted to work in VR.
Yeah.
But as far as the actual game itself, there's not a ton. Some issues with detecting certain flight sticks, but if you've got flight sticks or HOTAS set up, that's
familiar
just how
with that
it
already.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's just kind of unfortunately the standard right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, VR, that's also the standard. Sometimes your headset doesn't work right. Sometimes it takes some fiddling to get it, fiddling with it and stuff to get it to work. If you've got VR, you already know that as well. You should be no stranger to that. Most VR is like that. So, there doesn't sound like there's any real issues with the game. They just were ambitious and included a bunch of these new HIDs that aren't fully debugged.
Yeah, I think at that level too, it's kind of, I'm not sure if there's a HOTAS standard library that tries to get used and adopted, or how much needs to be supported, on a per device basis. But I'm okay kind of saying that if the main popular ones are working, and if there's a bunch of the kind of third party or lesser known ones that kind of have some issues, that seems to be kind of what happens with most games. It's kind of a hard ask to have a game work with like every single controller, but if it works with like the kind of main ones, or if they have a list of supported ones that are there, that would be nice. But it's, when you go to like the peripheral market, it's just kind of what happens. Like even like the wheel that I have, it'll work for most games that support it, because they assume it. But if you get some of the other wheels and try using them, sometimes they can be a bit jank. But it's until like there's an actual like standard library that gets provided by some vendor that promises it'll work with all devices, it's kind of hard. That it'd be a hard ask to have the developer take the time to do that if the market share is going to be less than 1%.
If you want to buy a device that is going to work really, really well and give you less headache, buy the most common one on the market. Don't buy the best one. The best one might give you a pretty good one, but the most common one on the market, the one that everyone has, is probably going to work in everything. That's typically the way it works. So yeah, I'm reading everything VR as well, basically here. So we're at good then.
Yeah, it's basically just HID devices that are not well adopted and came out way after this engine.
Yeah, and Windows on top of everything with these devices can get real tricky.
Yeah, I mean
VR and HOTAS and HOTAS / flight stick, not fight stick, flight stick related.
Yeah. So basically what we're saying is, sure, you look at the bugs of this game and you'll see pages and pages and pages of people complaining about VR headset issues and HOTAS issues. But if you look at any game that supports VR or HOTAS, you're going to see the same pages and pages and pages of complaints, because that's just those devices. They don't work sometimes and people complain.
Yeah, which is fair, but it's just how things are for now. Hardware is difficult, especially when you're trying to support many different things without a proper standard. I have I can't remember what joystick I have. I think it's a Logitech G20, is it G230, G23, or it's an older just single stick one, but it has like a weird knob on the back that it's a wheel that turns up and down, and like all HOTAS games always put that to the throttle, and it's just such an annoying thing to have to change. And a lot of times I can't even properly rebind it because it's just weird. But it's just, I've got an old joystick. I can't just imagine them to change to the new standard, because I'm sure they still use the same input map. But now that whatever that throttle is a lot newer on the newer devices, something a bit more sensible.
Yep.
Slight tangent. I think it was Blazing Angels. I think the game was, and it didn't properly register the throttle button or the throttle wheel, so it was always on max, and I didn't notice. I was wondering why the game was so freaking hard. Is because I could never throttle down to make the proper turns, so I'd always just get blown up. I'm like, why is this game so hard and difficult? Why can't I turn like the enemies do? It's because I'm always 100% throttled, so I'm just taking these wide ass turns while they're stopping, slowing down, and can take those super tight turns. It wasn't until eventually I found it out, and I'm like, oh, can I throttle down? And it's like, nope, doesn't work. And I'm like, fuck. Rebind it to mouse down or wheel down.
RNG. I don't think there was any.
Other than enemy behavior choices,
which might be RNG and might not be.
Yeah, as long as it's not obvious, it's usually our good keyword for that.
There is no obvious RNG. if it was used so well, we did not detect it.
And this is doesn't necessarily need to go in the notes, but this is a skill-based game, so less RNG is more better.
Yep. And I was the one who played it, and I got to give it a good on control. It always did exactly what I wanted it to do. It was very, very responsive. Very responsive.
On controllers as well. Because sometimes these games will be made for like joystick first or HOTAS first. But I think this one was planning. I'm not sure if it's on consoles, but it probably was planning. But
it is on
if it's
consoles.
Unreal, then it would definitely have those ability to go to it and would have controller stuff built in. So I'm glad that they, controller-wise, at least feels real nice.
It only released on Windows, but it did release on GOG, Humble Store, and Steam.
Okay. Yeah. But it is built off of Ace Combat, which is designed for a controller, and it feels a lot like Ace Combat. The ships feel a little heavier when you're flying them, but that makes them feel a little more real. And then when you throw in the AOA, you just have all this creative freedom to do whatever you want with your ship. And unless you're, getting overly excited and pushing in the thumbsticks when you shouldn't be, like I was doing sometimes, then you won't turn it on and off accidentally and you'll be fine.
I think a big part of it too.
Legitimately one of the reasons why I dislike the DS4 controller. I am constantly accidentally clicking in this thumbstick, and on DS4 there's two of them, so like I'm just accidentally clicking thumbsticks just all the time.
You gotta get your hands on one of these new DualSenses and try it out.
I do.
It's so lovely. I love it.
The PlayStation controller always hit the touchpad too, which when playing Days Gone opens the map, which was super fucking frustrating. It's like turn around because I'm getting attacked, and then the map just opens. I'm like, the fuck? I don't want this. And it would just happen all the time. I never noticed how much I actually do it. It's like when people use the DS4 on Windows and don't turn off the mouse control, they'll notice how much they actually accidentally touch that, because you're like, if you're playing a game, you'll just switch to mouse input and just completely whip around because it's super sensitive. But I'm like, oh my god, it is so easy to actually touch that. One thing I want to talk about controls though quickly for games like this, which is really important, is how much actual control buttons are needed, because it's something that's very common for flight simulators and not so much simulators, but like flight games that are more on the simulator side than on the arcade side, is they usually require a shit ton of buttons because they try to give you that kind of authentic feel. And it's to the point where I play some like Stalingrad or even Squadrons is a bit heavier on the button side, is because you have to switch between different weapon modes and different flight modes and all that stuff. Is I can't play it with just a joystick, and my joystick has quite a few buttons. I actually have to play it with the joystick and a keyboard to be able to push all those buttons. And I can't imagine, how fun that would be on a controller where you probably only have so many buttons, and it's going to start to feel like Doom, where there's just, every button has an important thing that you have to do, and it can be kind of, overwhelming and kind of frustrating if you accidentally push the wrong button, because you gotta try to do everything instantly or do things well or all that stuff. So I think from what I've seen for these games, they keep it fairly simple. Most stuff is, action buttons are defined and control buttons are defined, and you don't have to worry about memorizing a complicated system of what triggers what.
Modern is best. Controller is best for Project Wingman and Ace Combat. I would agree with you. I love the controller for it. It handles wonderfully.
Based on Deus's experience, I would say that is probably true.
Yeah, it was built for controller. Ace Combat was designed for controller based on the systems it was first on. Right? You can tell. PS2 is a controller game. Nobody in there, anybody had a flight stick for a PS2. It was a controller game. So that's where they evolved from, and it fully carries suit. Yeah. Yep. I'm with you. And its support for controller was wonderful, and the PC one recognized that it was a PlayStation controller and gave me all the right button info and just worked. It just worked. You're only a real gamer if you got the Xbox Steel Battalion set up. I'm not a real gamer.
Me neither. Ooh, Logitech has some sick flight sim gear.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yep. If I was to get one, that's what I would go with. Because it's such a big name, big name, that they're probably going to be supported.
They're HOTAS and foot pedals and everything, and then plus you can get the knob things. But I'm pretty sure, I think there's libraries out there that allow people to turn their either phones or their Stream Decks into interfaces for those games, which is kind of cool and can save you a bunch of money rather than just buying the plastic box with switches on it. As cool as it is very, very expensive for it's kind of a singular use.
So quick. Oh, there it is. Really?
They also have a heavy equipment bundle for your farming simulator, which is pretty awesome.
Have you seen the bus simulator too and trucking simulator stuff?
No,
I have not.
Oh, it's wild. I don't know if Logitech has any of it for that, but some of the peripherals that are out there.
You know what? We should do a panel on peripherals.
We should do a panel on peripherals.
Non-typical peripherals. So everything but a keyboard and mouse and controller.
I could have sworn that maybe it was a slightly similar topic, but I feel like we've talked about them before.
We did, but I think we were more talking about like the standard ones, like what you want to look for in a mouse, why you want to look for it, how they work. Same with keyboards. Why is a mechanical better than a non and stuff like that. But all these different like wild, like these controllers exist. That's kind of cool. That sounds like a fun panel. I'd ever be so serious about my farming sim to drop $1,200 on controllers. Yeah, me either, but you know what? There's all different kinds of people and all different kinds of games for those types of people. And that's why games are so awesome, right?
And there's also like professional use for them too. A lot of
training.
Make these kind of for like consumer, but also have it for professional aspects too, where you can use it for like training and stuff like that. Get people used to how these things work. Even like there's a lot of kind of more niche levels of stuff. Well, they'll still design it and they'll have it maybe for like a larger contract. And like, well, we still got the blueprints and specs. Why don't we just make a cheaper model and put it out there for some gamers to buy? Even though cheaper isn't very cheap.
No.
If you see some of the flight sims or flight sim setups that people have, especially like pilots and stuff like that just want to like either practice at home or just have some fun at home. If you Google like Microsoft Flight Simulator cockpits, people go crazy. Like there is some insane setups out there, even for like racing, racing setups. Like people will it's a very passionate hobby for a lot of people, and they'll put a lot of resources into it. It's really cool what they can create and have there.
Yeah, I've seen when I was looking through them, and it wasn't even as expensive as I thought it would be, and I got to admit, I went, for a couple minutes, and it was a 8-piston 4-motor, rock cage for race sim, so that actually, when you're hitting brakes and accelerating, you're actually going around and stuff. And for a brief moment, I went, "Oh, it's really only that much for the kid? Really?"
Yeah.
I don't have space for something like that. Luckily, I don't have like a garage and stuff like that. Otherwise, there would probably be one in it right now.
I cannot remember for the life of me. Oh yeah, it's Fanatec. That's the brand that I'm thinking of. I've been just like drooling over Fanatec's racing setups for a long time.
Yeah. I started getting into all of that when I first looked into Kerbal Space Platform or Kerbal Space Program setups. There's some really cool ones there. I saw a great one with an Arduino to do a bunch of relay information, and it had all the telemetry and everything laid out and relayed from the game, and actual knobs on it to tweak all of the individual settings. And I was like, and he had the blueprints for it, and I still have it bookmarked.
So expensive though.
Yeah. Oh boy, Sega Genesis activator peripheral panel? Yes, absolutely. Of course we have to look at the activator.
Oh, that was the one that had that really weird infomercial commercial. It's just not working, and even like the hosts are just like confused as to why anyone would ever actually use this, but they're still just trying to like keep positive and sell it. And it's just we'll go over it, but oh my god, forgot about this thing.
Okay, well I need to reestablish another token. Damn chatbot. Why can't you just take the token forever? Why must I? Why must I renew token every 30 days? And why can't you let me renew the token before it expires? That's a good one. You know what? Note for RageBot. Pop-up that warns the token is about to expire 7 days before it expires and lets you renew it before it expires.
And you can renew that token via an API.
Yeah.
You just need to re-auth through the OAuth setup, and then you can have it re-up your API token. So like that's totally doable. It's just lazy programming.
Yeah. These Fanatec people mean business. They sure do. They sure do.
Their wheels and racing setups are amazing. They're also $1 million.
It was like an octagonal ring. You stood inside and broke the planes of the ring with your limbs to control the game. It was the lamest attempt at motion controls ever. Yep, we'll talk about that. I'm sure we'll get to talk about some of the voice control in PS2 era.
Wouldn't be a very good real car, though.
Yep. Yeah, you can buy a Fanatec setup and drive all the supercars of the world, or you can get a real car and putter around from A to B. Honestly, the Fanatec setup sounds like way more fun. Not gonna lie about that.
No. Don't spend your tax return on a Fanatec setup. Don't do it.
Rage. Close the website. Close the website.
Good idea.
Close the website.
Okay,
there
website's
you go.
closed.
There we go. We're good. Okay, I will do the giveaway and we will do the announcements in the announcement channel. We've already gone long talking about Project Wingman and pooping on Chaos on Deponia. Which we didn't actually poop on it that hard, really. I mean, it looks a lot worse than Project Wingman's review, but it wasn't that bad of a game, I guess.
I think this is honestly fairly accurate. We did try to be
impartial,
the opposite of subjective, objective.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. If you really like point and click games, you'll probably like it.
If you're really into point and click games and have played literally every other good point and click game, then sure, why not?
It's fine. But if you at all like I don't even know what you'd call it, arcade sim playing games. It's not full arcade, but it's definitely not sim. If you like the Ace Combat series, you have to play Project Wingman. Let's leave it at that.
I just really like Focal.
I love the way my Foztecs look too. The wood finish is so distinct. They sound pretty nice too. So, hope you enjoyed that panel. I had fun. Next week, same time would be music and its impact in games. We gotta get ourselves some... We're gonna get ourselves DMCA'd is what we're gonna do.
I mean, not if we don't play back anything that you haven't done on stream already. We could just use clips from games that illustrate good and bad use of music.
I have played some examples. I haven't played a lot of really bad examples, but we'll just play back game music. Damn it!
Space country.
I had blocked that out of my head. No. I'm gonna eat some food, and I might be back later. Might be back later. I think the Canucks game is on right now, and just recently, not too long ago. So we'll see how they're doing. Yeah, I am, but I can't pull up my list of names right now, so I'll announce it in the announcements channel. I was just saying. Yes. So, I'll see you a little bit later. I hope you've all enjoyed. Thank you for hanging out with us today. Punk, Board, Val, everybody else that's lurking that I can't see on the chat list right now. Until later, I'm Deus.
I'm Rage.
And I'm Pseudo.
And may all your shots be headshots.